18 years after I adopted a 4-year-old girl I found outside a grocery store asking strangers for food. A woman worth more money than I could comprehend walked into my daughter's college graduation, placed the keys to a multi-million-dollar house in her hand, and told her she was finally ready to return to the family she belonged to. My daughter accepted the keys. For several seconds, I could hear the crowd around us cheering and laughing, but I couldn't seem to pull enough air into my lungs. My name is Laura Bennett. I was 57 that spring, and until that Saturday in Evanston, Illinois, I had assumed the most emotionally dangerous part of the weekend would be watching my daughter graduate from Northwestern without turning into the mother who sobbed through every photograph. I had driven up from Columbus the afternoon before in my aging Toyota Camry, a car that had survived 11 Ohio winters, 3 sets of tires, 1 teenager learning to drive, and more coffee spills than I cared to remember. Somewhere north of Indianapolis it had developed a faint tapping sound under the hood. Claire told me it was probably nothing. I told Claire that was an easy opinion to have when your name wasn't on the repair bill. That morning I wore a navy blue dress I had bought after trying on enough dresses to make the saleswoman start checking on me like I might need medical assistance. Claire came into my hotel room while I was packing my purse and stared at what I had arranged across the bed. Pain reliever, tissues, reading glasses, mints, bandages, safety pins, hand sanitizer, a granola bar, and, because I had learned from experience, a small sewing kit. Claire put both hands on her hips. Mom, we're going to commencement. We're not preparing for a natural disaster. You'll be asking me for something in that bag before lunch. I'm 22. 22-year-olds get headaches. She laughed and kissed my cheek. That was Claire. That had been us for 18 years. The first time I saw her, she wasn't my daughter. She was a tiny 4-year-old standing outside a grocery store on the east side of Columbus wearing a pink sneaker on one foot and a gray sneaker on the other. I had stopped after work because I needed milk, detergent, and something easy for dinner. I noticed her near the entrance because she was approaching people carefully, almost politely, asking whether they could buy her something to eat. Children that age shouldn't have to know how to ask strangers for food. At first I assumed an adult was nearby. I crouched down and asked where her mother was. Claire pointed toward the parking lot. There was no one there waiting for her. I went inside and found a manager. Security came out, then the police arrived. I expected to give a statement and go home. Instead, I drove home and thought about that little girl for the rest of the night. And the next day. And the day after that. Child welfare workers eventually discovered that Claire had been left in the care of an adult who disappeared for hours and sometimes days. The situation had deteriorated badly enough that Claire was placed in emergency foster care. I had never planned on becoming a foster parent. At 39, I was single and worked in payroll for a regional grocery distributor. My life was ordinary. My mortgage was manageable, my car usually started, my refrigerator contained far too many leftovers for one person. But I kept thinking about the mismatched sneakers. So I made a phone call. One phone call became an orientation meeting. The meeting became training sessions. Then background checks. Then interviews. Then home inspections. I learned about paperwork I had never known existed. Months later, Claire came to live with me. She arrived carrying one small bag and a stuffed rabbit with one ear partially torn away. The first night, she asked if she was allowed to open the refrigerator without permission. I told her yes. The second night, she asked again. For almost 3 months, she asked before taking food. The adoption took much longer. There were court dates, caseworkers, evaluations, missed appointments, adults who were supposed to appear and didn't, and long stretches when I refused to let myself believe anything was permanent. Eventually, a judge signed the papers. Legally, Claire became my daughter. Emotionally, that had happened long before. I wasn't wealthy. There were years when financial planning meant deciding which bill could wait until Friday. There were braces paid for in installments. Saturday swim meets before sunrise. A second-hand laptop when Claire started high school. A used Honda when she turned 16. I turned down a promotion once because the position required almost 2 weeks of travel every month. And then there was Mark. Mark and I dated seriously when Claire was in elementary school. For a while I thought he might become permanent. One evening, Claire came down with a fever just before Mark and I were supposed to have dinner. I cancelled. He showed up anyway, irritated, and stood in my kitchen while I filled a glass with water. You know everything in your life stops whenever Claire needs something. I looked at him. She's 9. That doesn't mean. It means exactly what you think it means. Mark lasted another month. I won't pretend every sacrifice felt noble while I was making it. Sometimes I resented being tired. Sometimes I looked at my bank account and wondered whether I had been reckless. Sometimes I missed the freedom I had before motherhood. By 57, my knees hurt after long staircases. My retirement savings were smaller than I had once imagined, and the woman looking back at me in hotel mirrors seemed older than the woman I still pictured in my head. But none of it mattered much when Claire walked across that stage. Biomedical engineering. Honors. My child. I clapped so hard my palms hurt. After the ceremony, we joined the thousands of families trying to take photographs without accidentally capturing 20 strangers in graduation gowns behind us. Claire posed with friends. She hugged professors. She let me take approximately 47 pictures she insisted were unnecessary. Then I noticed her checking her phone. Once. A minute later, again. Then a third time. Something wrong? No. I gave her the look. Every mother develops one eventually. Claire sighed. There's somebody here. Who? Someone I wasn't sure would actually show. Before I could ask another question, her attention shifted over my shoulder. The color drained from her face. I turned. A woman was walking toward us. She was probably in her early 50s. Ivory suit, dark sunglasses, perfect posture. Every movement had the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to people making room for her. A younger woman followed a few steps behind. So did a man carrying a leather document case. Claire whispered, "Mom." "What?" "That's her." "Who?" The woman stopped in front of us and removed her sunglasses. Her expression changed when she looked at Claire. "Claire?" Her voice trembled just enough to sound human. Then she looked at me. "You must be Laura." I immediately disliked the fact that she knew my name. "I am." She extended her hand. "Meredith Whitmore." I didn't recognize it. Then she said the sentence that changed the entire weekend. "I'm Claire's biological mother." I turned to my daughter. Claire looked toward the ground. "You knew?" "Not exactly." "How long?" "A few weeks." "A few weeks?" "She contacted me by email. I wasn't even sure she was real at first." "You didn't tell me?" "I was going to." Meredith spoke before Claire could continue. I asked her to give me the opportunity to explain everything face to face. My irritation sharpened. "You asked my daughter not to tell me you had contacted her?" Claire touched my arm. "Mom." I stopped. She was 22. Not 12. That distinction mattered, even if every instinct in my body wanted to place myself between her and Meredith. The man carrying the portfolio opened it. Meredith removed a large photograph. It showed a stone estate surrounded by mature trees and landscaped grounds. "This property is in Lake Forest," she said. Claire stared at it. "Okay." Meredith then held out a small leather case. Claire opened it. Inside were several keys. She frowned. "What are these?" "The keys to that house." Claire looked from the keys to the photograph. Meredith smiled. "It belongs to you." I genuinely wondered whether I had misunderstood. I would later learn the property was worth nearly $5 million. At that moment, all I understood was that a woman who had been absent for 18 years had arrived carrying more wealth than I had earned in my entire working life. Meredith touched Claire's hand. "You've shown us the kind of woman you've become. You're ready to come home. Come home. Not visit. Not meet us. Come home." And then there was that idea that Claire had somehow demonstrated she deserved it. As if the little girl outside the grocery store had spent 18 years taking an examination without knowing she had been enrolled. Claire stared down at the keys. Then she closed her fingers around them. Something painful moved through me. A thought I hated even while I was having it. Maybe this is all it takes. I immediately felt ashamed. Claire wasn't shallow. But she was 22, newly graduated, carrying student expenses, beginning a career, and standing across from a woman who could offer her a financial future I had never been able to provide. Claire turned toward me. Mom. I forced myself to meet her eyes. I'm not deciding anything right now. She looked at Meredith. I want to know why you're here, and I want the whole story. Meredith's smile returned. That was when I understood the house wasn't the story. It was the invitation into the story. And whatever Meredith Whitmore wanted from Claire, she had not traveled to Evanston merely to hand over a set of keys. That evening, Meredith invited us to dinner in downtown Chicago. The restaurant was inside a hotel near the river, the kind of place where the lighting was flattering. The chairs were upholstered, and the menu apparently assumed anyone concerned about prices had already wandered into the wrong building. I told Claire I wasn't going. She was sitting at the edge of the hotel bed with the keys on the nightstand beside her phone. Mom. No. I need to hear what she says. You can hear it over the phone. Claire looked at me for several seconds. No, I can't. I folded my arms. Even as I did it, I knew I was being unreasonable. Claire had lived 18 years with almost no information about her biological family. Now her birth mother had appeared without warning. Of course she wanted answers. Understanding that intellectually did very little to calm the part of me that wanted to protect her. You don't owe Meredith dinner. I know. Then why are we going? Claire looked at her hands. Because I need to ask why she left me. That ended the discussion. I changed shoes. We went. Meredith was already at the restaurant when we arrived. She wasn't alone. 4 people were seated with her. A man in his mid-50s stood the moment he saw Claire. Tall. Gray at his temples. Expensive suit without a tie. He stared at Claire in a way that made me uncomfortable until I realized there was no hostility in it. He looked overwhelmed. Claire. She stopped walking. Meredith moved beside him. This is Jonathan. Something in her voice made me brace myself. Claire looked between them. My husband, Meredith continued. Then she swallowed. And your father. No one spoke. Claire's expression emptied. Jonathan's face seemed to collapse. He turned toward Meredith. You're certain? Meredith nodded. The DNA results confirmed it 3 months ago. Jonathan stared at her. 3 months? His voice lowered. You told me she died. Claire flinched. So did I. Meredith looked around the restaurant. Jonathan, not here. He gave one quiet laugh with no humor in it. Where exactly would you prefer I learn that the daughter I buried in my mind 22 years ago has been alive this entire time? A waiter approached with menus. He surveyed our faces. Then he backed away. Under different circumstances, I might have appreciated his instincts. Claire pulled out a chair. We sat. Across from us were 2 younger people. The young man introduced himself as Evan. 20 years old. Perfect haircut. Perfect shirt. Watch worth more than my car. He looked at Claire with the guarded expression of someone who believed a stranger had entered a room and might leave carrying something that belonged to him. Beside him sat a young woman named Lila, 18. She gave Claire an uncertain smile. Hi. Claire returned it. Hi. Meredith began explaining. When Claire was born, Meredith had been married to Jonathan for less than 2 years. During that marriage, she had been involved with another man. She hadn't known with certainty who Claire's father was. She feared Jonathan would end the marriage if he discovered the relationship. More importantly, she feared losing her position inside the Whitmore family. Claire listened without interrupting. Then she asked, So you gave me away because you were afraid of what would happen to you? Meredith's mouth tightened. I placed you temporarily with someone I believed I could trust while I tried to understand what to do. Claire nodded slowly. And the temporary part lasted 18 years? Claire. I'm asking. Meredith looked down at the table. The woman who had you was supposed to care for you properly. I didn't know things had become unsafe. I leaned forward before I could stop myself. You didn't know because you weren't checking. Meredith turned toward me. Her expression barely changed. But I could tell the sentence landed. I was young. I nearly laughed. She had been 29. At 29, I had a mortgage, a full-time job, and enough basic judgment to understand that a child didn't disappear simply because adulthood became complicated. I kept that to myself. For the moment. Jonathan still looked stunned. You told me the baby was gone. Meredith whispered. I panicked. Because of me? Because I thought I was going to lose my entire life. Jonathan stared at her. For the first time that evening, nobody tried to make the truth sound prettier. Evan shifted uncomfortably. Could we maybe not have this conversation in the middle of a restaurant? Jonathan turned on him. Not now, Evan. That silenced him. For approximately 3 minutes. Food eventually appeared. I don't remember choosing mine. Claire barely touched hers. Meredith spent the next several minutes talking about regret, family, healing, and opportunities to begin again. Then she returned to the house. It's ready for you, she told Claire. Everything is furnished. You could stay there immediately. Claire looked up. Why would I move to Lake Forest? It would give you time near us. I'm looking for jobs. We can introduce you to people. Evan muttered something. Claire heard him. What did you say? Nothing. Then say it louder. He leaned back. I said a DNA test doesn't mean everyone's life suddenly gets rearranged. Claire looked at him. I haven't asked anyone to rearrange anything. You don't need to ask. Jonathan placed his fork down. Evan. What? Everybody knows this changes things. Lila frowned. I don't think everybody thinks what you think. Meredith intervened. This is emotional for all of us. Claire turned toward her. Why did you choose now? Meredith folded her hands. Because now we know who you are. You're part of this family. Lila had been tearing a dinner roll into little pieces. Without looking up, she said, and Grandpa is reworking the trust anyway. Everything stopped. Meredith turned sharply. Lila. Lila blinked. What? That isn't something we need to discuss. I thought everyone already knew. Evan shut his eyes as if wishing he could vanish. Jonathan looked at Meredith. Claire looked from one face to another. What trust? Meredith smiled too quickly. Private family matters, nothing you need to worry about tonight. Claire didn't push. But I knew that expression. She had heard it. Stored it. And she wasn't going to forget. Back at the hotel, the argument I had been trying to avoid finally arrived. Claire placed the keys on the dresser. She stood there looking at them. Then she said, part of me wants the house. I didn't answer immediately. She turned around. Does that make me awful? No. She waited. It makes you 22. She gave me half a smile. Then she sat. I want to know Jonathan. That makes sense. And Lila. Also makes sense. Claire hesitated. And I want to understand what their life is like. That one hurt. She saw it. I know how that sounds. Do you? Yes. She took a breath. I spent 4 years in college checking my account before I bought groceries. I watched you worry about bills my entire childhood. I know money isn't everything. But pretending it means nothing would be a lie. Just be careful not to confuse money with love. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew my tone had been wrong. Claire's expression changed. I'm not doing that. It sounds like you might be. And it sounds like you've already decided which feelings I'm allowed to have. That's not what I mean. You're making it sound like being curious about them is betraying you. I'm trying to keep you from getting hurt. By what? Finding out where I came from? By people who had 22 years to care and suddenly discovered you when you graduated with honors. Claire stood. Then frustration pushed a sentence out before she could stop it. You had 18 years with me. The room became completely quiet. Claire's face changed immediately. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. I stood. I know. And I did. But knowing didn't make it painless. I walked into the bathroom and shut the door. I didn't slam it. I simply closed it and sat on the toilet lid holding one of the hotel towels because apparently that is what 57-year-old women do when they don't want their adult daughters to hear them crying. A few minutes later, Claire knocked softly. Mom? I wiped my face. I'm okay. I'm sorry. I know. She was confused. So was I. The next morning, before Meredith left the hotel, I stopped her. One question. She turned. When did you first learn Claire was alive? Meredith didn't answer immediately. Years ago. How many years? Her face cooled. Is that important now? Yes. She walked away without answering. That afternoon, my phone rang. The woman introduced herself as Rebecca Hale. I'm an attorney representing Henry Whitmore. I recognized the surname. Jonathan's father. What can I do for you? I believe there are documents you and Claire should review before she makes decisions involving Meredith or the property. What kind of documents? Rebecca paused. Photographs. We met her later that afternoon. Rebecca didn't start with explanations. She opened a folder and placed a photograph on the table. My hands went cold. Claire was 11. She was riding her purple bicycle down our driveway in Columbus. Her hair was tied into a crooked ponytail. A bright green cast covered her left wrist. I knew the exact summer. That was when you broke your wrist. Claire looked closer. You remember which year? You attempted to prove Noah Parker wrong after he said girls couldn't jump the curb near his house. Claire almost smiled. I cleared it. You cleared the curb, you did not clear the landing. Normally she would have laughed. She didn't. Rebecca placed another picture down. It showed me unloading grocery bags from my car. Another showed Claire eating ice cream on our porch. Another showed the two of us leaving early one morning. Claire wore her backpack. I carried a travel mug and looked irritated, which probably meant we were late. Dates were printed along the bottom. All from the same week. Claire looked at Rebecca. Who took these? A private investigator. Who hired him? Rebecca didn't soften the answer. Meredith Whitmore. Claire went still. I felt a cold pressure settle in my stomach. She paid somebody to sit outside my home and photograph my child? Yes. For how long? The direct surveillance lasted several days. The overall investigation continued beyond that. Claire picked up the bicycle picture. She knew where I lived. Yes. How old was I? 11. I stood because staying seated suddenly felt impossible. 7 years. Meredith had known. She knew Claire's address. She knew her school. She knew my name. She had photographs. And she stayed away. Then a memory surfaced. A gray sedan. Claire noticed my expression. What? Our old neighbor. Mrs. Patterson? Ruth complained about some guy parking down the street years ago. Ruth Patterson had lived beside us for 12 years and considered our entire block her unofficial territory. She had once called me at work because Claire left her bicycle in the front yard. If a strange man had spent several days watching our house, Ruth would remember. I called. She answered after 4 rings. Laura Bennett, I haven't heard from you since the holidays. After a quick explanation, I asked about the gray car. Ruth became quiet. Oh, the insurance man. My grip tightened around the phone. What insurance man? The fellow in the gray sedan. I walked over and asked him why he kept sitting there. He told me he was handling some insurance investigation. Claire closed her eyes. You remember him clearly? Of course, he kept parking too close to my mailbox. That was Ruth. Apparently photographing my 11-year-old daughter wasn't memorable enough. Blocking the mailbox was. I thanked her. Rebecca opened another section of the folder. There's more. She slid a printed email toward Claire. It was from Meredith to the investigator. Reports about our household had been attached. One sentence had been highlighted. Claire read it. Her expression changed. Meredith had written that Claire appeared happy and that no contact should be made. Claire looked at Rebecca. She saw these pictures? Yes. And after she saw them, she told him not to approach me? Yes. Claire pushed the document away. For the first time since Meredith had appeared, confusion disappeared from her face. Anger replaced it. Not explosive anger. Something quieter. Sharper. She could have walked up our driveway. I sat beside her. Yes. She knew exactly where I was. Yes. Rebecca explained that Meredith had made inquiries more than once over the years. Not constantly. Just often enough to confirm that Claire remained in Columbus, attended school, and appeared safe. Every time, Meredith chose not to make contact. Claire looked across the table. Why? Rebecca chose her words carefully. Because acknowledging you would have reopened questions surrounding your birth, Meredith's relationship outside her marriage, and what Jonathan had been told. Claire gave a short, bitter laugh. So I was inconvenient. Rebecca didn't answer. She didn't need to. Then she explained the financial situation. Henry Whitmore was 82. He had built much of the family fortune through commercial real estate and transportation companies. A large trust held assets for several generations of Whitmore descendants. The recent DNA test had conclusively established that Jonathan was Claire's biological father. That meant Claire was Henry's biological granddaughter. And Henry was reconsidering how authority over those family assets would be distributed. Meredith and Evan had apparently been seeking increased influence. A public reconciliation with the daughter Meredith had hidden for 22 years could dramatically change the way Henry and the trustees viewed her. Claire looked at the Lake Forest keys. So the house is payment? Rebecca shook her head slightly. I can't tell you what Meredith feels. I can only tell you what the documents show. Claire managed a tired smile. That may be the most attorney answer I've ever heard. Rebecca almost smiled. What I can say is that accepting property does not require you to perform a relationship for anyone. Claire stepped outside a few minutes later to answer a phone call. I leaned toward Rebecca. If she wants to refuse everything, the house, money, trust interests, can she? Yes. I exhaled. Then Claire's voice came from behind me. You mean, can I refuse everything? I turned. She stood in the doorway. That isn't what I meant. It sounded exactly like what you meant. I'm worried. So is Meredith. Apparently everybody is worried about me as long as being worried gives them permission to decide what I should do. That isn't fair. Claire looked at me. Then she spoke quietly. Mom, Meredith is trying to tell me who I'm supposed to become. I said nothing. You don't get to do that too. It hurt. Mostly because she was right. I sat back down. You're right. Claire looked surprised. I spent 18 years teaching you to think for yourself. I don't get to be angry because it worked. Her shoulders loosened. I still don't know what I want. You don't need to know today. That evening Evan texted her. Claire showed me the message. He asked whether she really believed Meredith had given her a $5 million house because she suddenly missed her. Claire typed back. What do you think she wants? His reply arrived almost immediately. Grandpa is changing the trust. Everyone suddenly cares a lot about appearances. Claire stared at the screen, then wrote. Does that include you? There was a long pause. Finally. I don't know you. Claire gave a humorless smile. Then she typed. At least that answer is real. The next morning Meredith called. She was planning a reception 2 nights later at a luxury hotel in Oak Brook. She described it as an intimate gathering. Family. Longtime friends. A few business associates. She wanted to introduce Claire properly. I assumed Claire would refuse. Instead, she opened Rebecca's folder. She stared at the photograph of herself on that purple bicycle. Then she put the Lake Forest keys into her purse. You don't have to go, I said. I know. Then why go? Claire picked up the photograph. Because I have one question. What? She slipped the picture into her purse. When she was looking at 11-year-old me through somebody else's camera. Why didn't she come to the door herself? The hotel in Oak Brook had marble floors, enormous arrangements of fresh orchids, and furniture that looked designed to prevent ordinary people from relaxing. Meredith had called the event small. There were at least 60 guests. I looked at Claire. So much for intimate. Maybe rich people use a different number system. I laughed. I needed to. My stomach had been tight since we arrived. There were family friends. Executives. Attorneys. Business associates. 2 men Rebecca quietly told us were involved with the Whitmore Trust. There was even a professional photographer circulating through the room. Meredith hadn't arranged a reunion. She had arranged an audience. She appeared wearing a pale blue dress and crossed the ballroom toward Claire. Before Claire could react, Meredith kissed her cheek. "You look wonderful." Then she turned toward me. "Laura, I'm pleased you came. I wouldn't have missed it." Her smile tightened. Jonathan stood near the bar. He looked older than he had 2 nights earlier. He hugged Claire awkwardly and asked about her plans after graduation. She told him she was still interviewing. He nodded and asked about Ohio. It was painfully ordinary conversation between 2 people trying to build a bridge across 22 missing years. Lila stayed close to Claire. Evan stayed across the room. At around 8, Meredith tapped a spoon lightly against her champagne glass. Conversation faded. She stepped forward. There are moments in every family when life offers us a chance to repair something we once believed was gone forever. I felt my jaw tighten. She was good at this. She spoke about painful circumstances. Unexpected separation. Regret. Healing. Second chances. What she didn't say was simpler. I left my child. Instead, Claire's disappearance seemed to have happened through some mysterious force neither Meredith nor anyone else could have controlled. Then Meredith gestured toward me. "I will always be grateful to Laura for providing Claire with stability and care during the years when circumstances kept us apart." Several guests looked toward me. A few smiled warmly. I smiled back because I had been raised correctly. Inside, I wondered whether 18 years of motherhood qualified me for more than the phrase stability and care. Meredith continued. "No child should ever feel forced to choose between the family who raised her and the family she was born into." It sounded generous. That was what made it clever. Underneath those words was a quiet assumption. Claire was back now. Back where Meredith believed she belonged. An assistant brought forward the leather folder containing the house documents. Meredith held it out. "This will always be your home whenever you're ready for it." People applauded. Claire accepted the folder. For the first time that evening, Meredith looked genuinely relieved. Then Claire said, "Could I say something?" Meredith smiled. "Of course." She handed Claire the microphone. Claire held it in both hands. "I actually wanted to ask a question." "Anything." Claire looked directly at her. "What circumstances?" Meredith blinked. "I'm sorry? You said circumstances kept us apart." The room became quieter. "I'm asking what circumstances those were." Meredith gave a soft laugh. "Claire, darling, this probably isn't the right moment to reopen every painful part of the past." Claire glanced around the ballroom. "You invited 60 people and hired a photographer to announce that I'd come back to the family. No one moved. I think you chose the moment." Someone near the back coughed. Meredith's smile faded. Claire continued. "When did you first know where I was?" Meredith lowered her voice. "We've already talked about that privately." "No, you avoided answering it." Jonathan stopped looking at Claire. He was watching Meredith now. Claire asked again. "How old was I when you found me?" Meredith inhaled. 11. A quiet murmur moved through the room. Claire reached inside her purse. She removed the photograph. "Did you come to Columbus?" Meredith said nothing. "Did you ever knock on our door?" Claire. "Did you call?" No answer. "Did you ask Laura whether I needed anything?" Meredith's face tightened. "You were safe." Claire held up the photograph. "You knew I was safe because you hired someone to watch me." Jonathan stepped forward. "What?" Meredith turned. "Jonathan, please. You had someone following her?" "I needed to know she was okay." Claire's voice stayed remarkably calm. "Then why didn't you come to the house?" Meredith looked at her. For one brief moment, she had no answer prepared. Then she found one. "I saw the life Laura had built for you. You were happy. I believed appearing unexpectedly would have disrupted that. I thought staying away was the least selfish thing I could do." I nearly admired the audacity. Claire didn't react. She simply asked another question. "Then why are you disrupting it now?" "Because things have changed." "What changed?" "We know the truth." "What truth?" Meredith's frustration surfaced. "That Jonathan is your father. That you're part of this family. You're a Whitmore." Claire nodded slowly. I was Jonathan's daughter when I was 11. The room changed. Jonathan looked down. Meredith looked toward the guests. For the first time, she seemed aware she was losing control. Then Evan spoke from near the bar. Can we stop pretending Grandpa's trust has nothing to do with this? Meredith spun toward him. Evan. He shook his head. No, I'm done. Jonathan frowned. Stay out of this. But Evan had clearly spent several days carrying his own anger. He pointed toward Claire. Mom said bringing Claire back would prove to Grandpa that this family could stand together. Lila stared at him. Claire barely moved. Meredith's voice sharpened. That is not what I said. Evan laughed. Seriously? Stop. Why, you've been panicking for months because Grandpa is changing who gets control. The ballroom fell completely silent. Meredith turned to Claire. He has no idea what he's talking about. Claire looked toward Rebecca. The attorney had been standing near two of Henry Whitmore's representatives. Rebecca didn't make a dramatic speech. She simply said, Mr. Whitmore's office has documentation showing when Mrs. Whitmore first located Claire, as well as records from later investigations. Meredith's hand moved. Champagne spilled over the rim of her glass and ran across her fingers. She didn't seem to notice. This is being distorted. Claire looked at her. Then explain it. I was trying to protect everyone. Everyone who? My family. Claire waited. Meredith looked around the room. At Jonathan. At Evan. At Lila. At the trustees. At people who had been smiling at her 10 minutes earlier. Then something inside her finally cracked. You have absolutely no idea what I was trying to protect. Claire said nothing. Meredith's voice rose. I was trying to keep this family intact. Silence. Claire looked directly at her. Protected from me? Meredith's face changed. She immediately understood what she had said. Jonathan stepped forward. You told me my daughter was dead. Jonathan. You told me she was dead. I can explain. Then you found her. Meredith's eyes filled. You don't understand what happened. You found my daughter. His voice became quieter. And you left her there. Meredith suddenly turned toward me. This is exactly what you wanted. I stared at her. You've turned Claire against me. I had spent most of the evening trying not to become part of the confrontation. But that accusation required an answer. I didn't need to turn her against anyone. Meredith opened her mouth. I continued. You had years to introduce yourself. That was all. Meredith looked back at Claire. The house remains yours, whatever you believe about me. That part was sincere. Claire lifted the folder. No conditions? Meredith hesitated. 60 people watched her. No conditions. Claire nodded. Good. Then she kept the folder. And the keys. Even I hadn't expected that. On the drive back to the hotel, neither of us spoke for nearly 10 minutes. Highway lights passed across Claire's face as we drove along I-88. Finally, I asked. You're really keeping it? Claire watched the road. I'm keeping what she chose to give me. I waited. She turned toward me. That doesn't mean she gets whatever she expected in return. Claire never moved into the Lake Forest house. She didn't return it either. For the next 2 months, she did something considerably less dramatic and much more intelligent. She hired an attorney. Then a tax advisor. That was when I knew I had done at least one thing correctly as a mother. The property had been transferred to Claire without contractual conditions. Once her attorney verified that, Claire decided to sell it. One evening we sat at my kitchen table in Columbus. She closed her laptop. I need you to promise not to judge me. That sentence has never once been followed by something that didn't tempt me to judge you. Mom. Fine, continue. I'm keeping part of the money. I stared at her. Obviously. She blinked. You're not disappointed? Claire, you spent 4 years comparing cereal prices down to 40 cents. She laughed. I'm serious. So am I. You're allowed to have savings. Her expression became more thoughtful. I don't want to donate everything just to prove Meredith didn't buy me. Then don't. That answer seemed to lift something from her shoulders. After the sale, taxes, fees, and professional advice, Claire handled the money carefully. She paid off the remaining education expenses she had. She invested a significant portion. She created enough savings that she wouldn't begin her career terrified of every unexpected expense. And she donated a substantial amount to an established Ohio organization that helped young adults transitioning out of foster care. Housing deposits, transportation, education expenses, basic emergency support. Things many young adults with families barely thought about. Months later, Claire told me she was considering creating a scholarship. I said, "You should call it the Bennett Scholarship." She gave me a look. No. I wasn't asking. Mom, you can't argue with a scholarship named after you. I absolutely can. That was one argument I was happy to lose. Her relationship with the Whitmores remained complicated. Claire didn't cut Jonathan out. I respected that. Their first few meetings were painfully awkward. He couldn't replace 22 missing years with expensive dinners. And to his credit, he didn't really try. He answered her questions. Even the uncomfortable ones. Why hadn't he demanded more evidence when Meredith told him their baby had died? Why had he accepted the explanation so quickly? Had he never suspected anything? Had there been signs? Some answers disappointed Claire. But Jonathan didn't hide behind polished language. Sometimes he simply said, "I should have asked more questions." Other times, "I trusted someone I shouldn't have trusted." Those answers couldn't repair the past. But they were honest enough to build something from. Claire continued speaking with Lila too. They discovered they had similar taste in movies and completely opposite opinions about music. Lila texted Claire constantly during her first semester of college. Their relationship was strange, new, and occasionally uncomfortable. But it belonged to them. Evan was more complicated. After the reception, the hostile messages stopped. About a month later, Claire received one text from him. "For whatever it's worth, Mom lied to all of us." Claire showed me. "Are you going to answer?" She thought about it. Then typed. "For whatever it's worth, I know." That was it. Claire also kept the last name Bennett. Jonathan eventually asked about it. Carefully. "I've wondered whether you've ever considered using Whitmore too." Claire didn't hesitate. "Bennett is on every report card I brought home. Every school form, every diploma, every permission slip my mom signed." She looked at him. "I'm keeping it." Jonathan nodded. "I understand. Henry Whitmore surprised me more than anyone. I expected an intimidating billionaire. Instead, I met an 82-year-old man who walked with a cane, wore hearing aids, and became visibly annoyed when crossing a room took 5 times longer than it once had. Money had protected him from many things. It had not protected him from arthritis. The first time Henry met Claire privately, he didn't offer her a check. He asked about biomedical engineering. He wanted to understand her research. He asked which companies she was interviewing with and what kind of work she hoped to do. Then he turned to me. What was she like when she was little? The question changed the atmosphere. Because I had 18 years of answers. He had none. She hated peas. Claire groaned. Mom. She did, would hide them under mashed potatoes like I couldn't see them. Henry smiled. What else? She loved thunderstorms until she was 8. Used to sit by the window and count between the lightning and thunder. Claire looked at me. You remember everything. Unfortunately for you. I looked back at Henry. She broke her wrist because a neighborhood boy told her girls couldn't jump a bicycle over a curb. Henry chuckled. Did she make it? Claire answered before I could. The front wheel did. His smile widened. Then his eyes became wet. He looked away. So did I. Sometimes giving someone dignity means pretending you didn't notice the tears. Later, Rebecca told Claire that Henry had removed Meredith from every advisory position involving the grandchildren's trust arrangements. I never asked how much financial influence that cost Meredith. By then I understood money was probably the smallest thing she had lost. Jonathan separated from her. Claire didn't cause that. I didn't cause it. Their marriage had been asked to carry a 22-year lie into daylight. It couldn't. Meredith remained extremely wealthy. She still had houses, cars, investments, connections. The sort of financial security ordinary people spend their lives imagining. But she no longer controlled the story. A few weeks later, she came to my house in Columbus. No assistant. No driver waiting at the curb. Just Meredith standing on my porch. "I'd like to speak with you alone." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She looked tired. For a few seconds, I genuinely thought she might apologize. Instead, she said, "Claire listens to you." I almost smiled. I'm her mother. I would hope she occasionally listens. Then talk to her. About what? She's making decisions she may regret because she's angry. She seems pretty calm. Meredith exhaled. She's pushing away her family. No, she's deciding who she wants in her life. You don't understand. There it was again. That sentence. Then Meredith said something I don't think she had planned to say. You have no idea what it feels like to lose 18 years with your child. I stared at her. Nobody took those years from you. She stopped. You knew exactly where Claire was. Meredith looked toward the street. You chose not to come. For once, she had no response. I had no desire to humiliate her. I didn't need to win. I simply needed one boundary to be unmistakable. Whatever relationship Claire chooses to have with you from this point forward belongs to Claire. You don't control it. I paused. And neither do I. Then I went inside. Several months later, Claire came home for a weekend. Within 5 minutes she had opened my refrigerator and started complaining. Mom, why are you still buying this terrible coffee creamer? I looked at her. Apparently selling a $5 million house hasn't improved your manners. She laughed. It sounded exactly like the laugh she had when she was 16. That mattered to me more than I expected. Over dinner, she told me she had received 2 strong job offers. One was relatively close to Ohio. The other wasn't. I immediately pointed my fork at her. Do not choose based on where I live. Claire smiled. That. What? That right there. What did I do? That's the difference. Between what? She pushed her plate away. You've always wanted me to build my own life. I waited. Meredith wanted me to fit into hers. There wasn't much I could add. Later that year, Henry visited Columbus. Before leaving, he shook my hand. I don't know how I could ever thank you for raising my granddaughter. For a moment, I considered simply accepting the compliment. Then I smiled. Mr. Whitmore, I didn't raise your granddaughter. He looked confused. I raised my daughter. He stood there for several seconds. Then he nodded. For years, I believed motherhood was measured primarily by sacrifice. The money you spent. The sleep you lost. The opportunities you gave up. The dinners you canceled. The nights you sat beside a sick child. The school forms. The braces. The driving lessons. The mornings when you got out of bed even when you desperately wanted another hour of sleep. Claire taught me something different. She didn't remember every sacrifice. She didn't know how many nights I had worried about money after she went to bed. She didn't know every opportunity I had declined. She didn't know how often I had been afraid I wasn't enough. What she remembered was simpler. Who came to the swim meets? Who knew she hated peas? Who sat in the emergency room after the bicycle accident? Who signed the permission slips? Who answered the phone? Who stayed? And when Claire became old enough to make choices I couldn't make for her. Motherhood required something entirely different from sacrifice. It required trust. I had spent 18 years raising a woman capable of making her own decisions. My final job wasn't to keep making those decisions for her. It was to believe in the person I had raised. Blood gave Claire another family. Money gave her possibilities. Truth gave her choices. But none of those things erased 18 ordinary years in a small house in Columbus. Years built from cereal bowls, carpool lines, homework, scraped knees, grocery lists, arguments, forgiveness, birthdays, bad coffee, hospital waiting rooms, and all the little moments nobody photographs because they don't seem important while they're happening. Meredith believed she could bring Claire home. The truth was that Claire had already had a home. She had simply become old enough to decide how many people were allowed through the door. And if there is one thing those 18 years taught me, It is that family is not always determined by the person who shares your blood. Sometimes family is the person who keeps showing up after everyone else has found a reason not to. Sometimes the person who stays is the person who earns the name.